Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Final Third podcast, a podcast created to bring you the most candid coverage of Austin FC, FC Dallas, and the Houston Dynamo, all in one place. My name is Silvio Prieto, and on today's show, myself, co-host Oscar Aguilar, and Javier Adame preview an exciting Week 4 of the MLS, where FC Dallas and the Houston Dynamo face off in the first Texas Derby of the season. All right, guys, it's finally here, the first Texas Derby of the year. And I guess, okay, here's my first question for you guys. Do we still call it the Texas Derby, or do we call it the original Texas Derby now that we have Austin FC in the mix?
Let me be honest. It's the only Texas Derby. Thank you.
He's right because Austin's gonna make the other teams not.
It's not even gonna be a derby at that point.
Yeah, it's not even gonna be a derby. How can it be a derby when it's just gonna be one team winning it? So.
There's so much growing animosity between the Texas teams that I feel like these might be even bigger games than the California teams playing each other at this point. But
because some people wear orange all their lives in the Houston suburbs, and then they just trade it off for green. Couldn't be me.
Shots are being fired right now.
I can hear you from all the way at the bottom.
we're 2 points behind. Chill out.
There are 2 big points.
All right.
Hey, I'm saying Austin wins 2 games and they think all that. All right, then. Moving on.
All right, continuing the theme of growing animosity, we have FC Dallas, of course, hosting the Houston Dynamo this Saturday. Houston is coming off of I guess you could call it unjust tie to MLS powerhouse LAFC, while Dallas picked up their first win of the season against the Portland Timbers. Let's start with the Houston side of this derby. Oscar, like I've said, so much animosity, especially on social media, growing between the cities. How do you feel about this first Texas Derby of the season?
Well, going to Frisco, not Dallas, so that's a change of scenery. So it's always great to see that. But it'll be an interesting game for Houston. I think it all comes down. It's going to be played in the midfield. Whoever can dominate the midfield is going to end up winning the game. When you look at FC Dallas's past 3 games, they won and lost games there. And so did Houston. And it'll be interesting to see how Houston is able to fare against Dallas's high tempo pressing there from Acosta, Bresson, and all those very talented defensive players.
Yeah, for sure. And I think talking a little bit on the Dallas side for me, I think they'll likely hold most of the possession given their play style and how they like to go on about games. And I think that kind of plays into Houston's hand because I'm sure they'll approach their game the same as they have for the first 3 this season. I think they're near the bottom when it comes to the amount of possession they have during the games. They might be actually last time I checked. I'm not sure. But a huge question, at least for Dallas, and something that might dictate the flow of the game is how much purpose will Dallas have with their possession? Because if it isn't a possession with a lot of direction and they waste a lot of it, Houston will absolutely take advantage of this.
Interesting you mentioned that because I think the game's going to come down to 2 things. Like I said, Dallas is near the top and pressuring in the mid third.
Mhm.
And whenever they did like have a high volume of press in that section of the field,
Mhm.
they ended up winning very well. Example, Portland against FC Dallas last weekend. But in reality, they don't do a lot of touching per se or touches per se in their attacking third. Like you said, they do a lot of passing, but they tend to recycle a lot into the defensive third and in the mid third. until a gap opens up for like I would say not a long ball, but a very progressive
Yeah.
pass
Mhm.
towards very lethal players like Pepe and Obrian, right?
Mhm.
Um, and Houston has, I guess, fallen victim to a lot of mental lapses. So I think to counterattack that, Lundqvist is going to have to play deeper than he usually does. Um, he has lost, I believe, a little bit over 60% of one-on-ones, and a lot of the times, when there's like a goal scoring opportunity against Houston, it has come from that left back section of the field because Lundqvist is trying to track back too late. So I think Top Ramos would be smart and wise to just play a little bit deeper with his with his fullbacks and make sure that they're able to play out very quickly and avoid that struggle in the mid third against Dallas.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you know, trying to studying these two teams going into this weekend, I thought that Houston would probably be a little more conservative off the ball. I don't know if that's fair to say, especially when it comes to pressing. I think they'll try to moments, pick the right moments, to pounce and increase their intensity and try to catch Dallas on their back foot, which they have been caught on their back foot a lot, and it's kind of how they've conceded a lot of chances to their opponents. So this will be kind of an interesting thing to look at during the game. Speaking a little bit more on how Dallas will start the game and line up, I think Lucci will most likely start the game with, last week's 4-2-3-1 out of possession, 4-3-3 in possession system, because I think it worked very well. They got their first win of the season. And we'll probably, go with the same thing. I think it'll work better than if he started the game with the 3-4-3 shape. Um, which he has used before because of the defensive stability that it gives Dallas. And I think Dallas will need that against Houston's counter threat on the flanks with their pacey wingers like Moneyball Pasher and Fafinho.
I love those nicknames. But I do think Dallas has some weaknesses that
hmm
I don't think we've mentioned previously in the podcast because they haven't become apparent until like 3 games in when you
hmm
see it happen over and over again. And it all comes down to Gil or Jill. He just hasn't been very good on the one-on-ones, which is where I think Houston is going to thrive the most with Memo, Pasture, and Pika Ul.
hmm
So I think if they exploit him, they're gonna do at least fairly decent and at least creating some opportunities, right? The issue is that there are other players that have been excessively above average, like Bresson, and it gets difficult on how Houston should press, like you mentioned. Um, I don't think they should calm down the press per se. Against Portland, they pressed the least and they got punished for it because they couldn't really create chances unless they were against a team that was kind of like tracking back or just not in the right shape, right? When they get teams time to regroup, they're not able to really create anything. And all three other goals have come off some sort of like lax, disorganized defense. So, would you say Houston would need to maybe instead of pressing these players that can play out the back really well, like I mean, all of Dallas's players can play off the back really well, and instead try to like maybe cut passing outlets, or what do you think would be the right solution for for Houston going into the game?
Honestly, looking at the way Dallas has played their last three games, and I honestly don't have any statistics to back this up, but just watching the games, sure, they seem very secure when building up, but they do make very simple errors positionally. And I think Houston will benefit from picking the right moments to increase their intensity in terms of pressing. And I think by doing so, they can try to sure you're also blocking off like a cutting lane when you are pressing a player, but I've seen Dallas scramble, and when they do get pressed and maybe the first or second option aren't available, they kind of completely crumble. And a lot of
Hmm.
teams have been able to go ahead and you know counter them and take advantage of that I guess lack of composure when they are pressed. So and given the fact that Houston does have, like you pointed out, really good players on the one-on-ones like Pasher and Fafinho, I think they can Fafinho, Fafa, but Fafinho, yeah, whatever. I think if you can pick the exact or the correct moments when to press intensely, I think they could easily regain possession, feed the ball to one of their creative wingers, and create goal scoring chances that way.
Definitely. And I mean, it'll be both ways because I mean, I hope they start with Quarte up top, like we had discussed in the previous podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Um, he's definitely in value, like he's
Absolutely.
so good that he's irreplaceable in
Absolutely.
that role. I also do think though that Pepe should start over Hara
I
again.
agree.
I mean, if you just look at a very simple stuff, let's like think XG, right?
Mm-hmm.
Riquarte and Pepe lead the team on that, like by far, not even close. And I don't really see a reason to put in Hara. Just looking at stats, at least,
Yeah.
there's no like. I'm not saying he's bad. Like if Pepe wasn't there,
No,
definitely should,
absolutely. Yeah.
but not over him.
No, I think he should. I think Lucci should go with the exact same lineup he started with. Go. I also think starting Tessman and Acosta uh,
Hmm.
will be important for Dallas because they can kind of go ahead and take a page out of Portland's playbook and out of possession try to shut down Memo. I think this could be like an interesting mini battle on the pitch to watch and see how maybe Tab or Lucci tactically adjust to this because I think Houston does have a lot of potential when Memo is unlocked. But like have we see, like we saw with Portland when he is kind of shut off of the game and isn't able to show his creativity, Houston do lack a certain amount of um threat going forward. I'm not sure what the right word would be, but that kind of I don't know. I feel like Memo can sniff out these chances and kind of create something out of nothing.
No, definitely. And I mean, I know Dallas should start the same 11. I completely agree with that. Do you think Houston should start the same 11? Because I'm honestly torn. Do you start a Ruti? Do you start um, our DP, or do you try to switch something up? Because like compared to Austin, right? We talked about it last week,
Hmm.
or for the last week's recap.
Yeah,
Austin would constantly like drop tempo like after the 60th minute mark, right?
yeah,
And you don't necessarily see that from all of Houston, but you see that from some of Houston's key players. Memo after the 60th minute, completely different player. He's just not as, I would say, dynamic or fluid as he could be because
hmm,
of that. Um, I guess, ability to maintain that same production.
yeah.
But when you look at Pasher, it's kind of similar as well.
That's true.
Um,
Yeah,
you see him, I would say, dominate the game the first half and even starting the second half. But again, he drops back down. And I don't think the Houston has like the depth um, to really swap them out in the last 20 minutes, like we saw against LAFC,
hmm,
where where Tal Ramos put in Seren and he really tried to just hold on to that one point. And I mean, does Quintero even get a few minutes? He hasn't been looking well. And, some fans question Tal Ramos for not starting him after that first game and even during that first game. But the minutes he's had, I honestly feel like he should have just stayed on the bench.
yeah. This is kind of you bring up a very interesting point when it comes tactically because we have seen Houston out of possession press in a 4-4-2 shape with Uruti and Memo up top, and given how Dallas will probably not line up, they will probably be they will probably cut off a lot of passing lanes to Tessman and Acosta. I think, and I'm not sure because we haven't seen this much from Quintero, and I'm not sure if he's as comfortable as Urruti pressing in that system, and I think or out of possession in that system, and I think I would give the nod to Aruti just because he's a little more familiar with what Ramos wants. And I do think that this game might come down to tactical adjustments between the two managers. So I would give the nod to Aruti then. But I think if the game opens up is a little more back and forth, right? Because, it is a derby after all, and game plans kind of go out the window as intensity and emotions increase in games sometimes. So if it does become a little bit more back and forth game, I wouldn't fault Ramos for subbing out Uruti.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, especially you know. I think you would want to keep Uruti there because when I've seen Houston press in that 4-4-2, they do a fairly good job of you know limiting the opponent's buildup to their own third, which could force Dallas to try to ping long balls, which I think isn't isn't to their won't set them up for success, right? What will let Dallas break the game open is getting the ball to their creative players like Riquarte. But if Houston do a good job of limiting their buildup to the third, Dallas kind of becomes a little impatient with the ball and then tries to overcompensate vertically for the lack of buildup. So I think starting a Ruti and limiting Dallas to their own third in terms of buildup could help Houston.
I think the only concern I would have with that is Dallas Houston overextending a little bit too much.
Hmm.
I maybe they pick Uruti to be that man to be like the high tempo press for them,
Mm-hmm.
but Memo can't press. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't waste him pressing, right? Joe Corona, he's all right, but again, I wouldn't waste him pressing because he's irreplaceable offensively. We don't
Mm-hmm.
have anyone else to switch him out, right? Vera, no problem, but I would prefer him to play deeper, kind of like how he did against LAFC. And that really helped, I guess, some of the defensive issues the back four have had, where, like we said, they either shift too much to the left and they leave Valentine kind of vulnerable
Mm-hmm.
on the one on one for trying to cut out a pass. Um, I think a solution though that you kind of mentioned, since they shouldn't be allowing them to go into like the attacking third very easily, might be to start set in over another player.
Mm.
Which player I'm not entirely sure, but like kind of like what Todd Ramos did against LAFC. If you want to shut down a team that has, I would say, like superior offensive quality, pairing Vera and Sedan worked really well against
Mm-hmm.
LAFC those last few minutes.
Yeah, that could definitely give Houston a bit of an edge there. Maybe I misspoke a little bit. Maybe I didn't mean press. What I kind of meant is maybe having Memo and Uruti kind of, I guess you could call man mark Tespin and Acosta, because then you are kind of just leaving the ball to the center backs, who I would rather give them the ball than Tespin and Acosta to be able to turn and maybe find Requarte. So, but yeah, no,
I
absolutely, you're right.
definitely, I
Yes.
mean, now that you mention it, I
Mm-hmm.
definitely think Tasman should be targeted if he does start.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I mean, okay, him and Acosta played a very similar role, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But I mean, I get Testman's like the little prodigy from the academy and such,
Yeah.
but at least in this season, Acosta has been very solid, not only defensively but on the ball.
Mm-hmm.
Where Testman, I mean, he hasn't been bad, but he hasn't been great. And I think if you
Absolutely.
um, consistently, he's gonna make the mistakes out of that midfield.
Right.
I don't think Riquarte. I mean, we should mark Riquarte, limit his spaces, but Riquarte can get out of pressure, no
Yeah.
problem, right? I
Absolutely.
don't think Testman's gonna be able to do that. So definitely something Houston should look out for.
Yeah, and absolutely, and that kind of comes back to the point I try to make about picking the moments where you want to maybe press or increase your intensity. Because let's do say Acosta gets the ball in in the middle of the pitch, if you do press him, he's more likely to get out of that situation and have some space going forward to feed Requarte than Tessman. Like you've noted, he has crumbled under pressure a lot, and he's not as agile on the ball and able to find quick solutions to pressing problems from other teams. So I absolutely agree with that. And also speaking on Requarte, I think Houston should definitely try to nullify his ability in those dangerous areas in like that enganche area that he's probably going to occupy. But if he drops a little deeper, uh I wouldn't track a player with Requarte if he goes a little deeper, right? If like we've seen it before when Dallas has issues building up, they do drop Requarte at times. I wouldn't be surprised if the way Houston line up and gives Dallas problems building up. But if Requarte drops a little deeper, I think that's a definite plus for the Dynamo, showing them that they're doing something right because you're getting one of their most dangerous players uh, out of goal scoring areas.
For sure. I think defensively that would be key for Houston.
Hmm.
And I mean, going, I guess, and shifting into offensively for Houston as well. Um, I think the key would be to really avoid the mid third, specifically like the center of the field. Um, if you look at Dallas's like pressing stats, they're top of the league not because of a single player, right? That like I mean, Acosta's good, but he's not carrying the team. You see O'Brien, which I think has been overlooked defensively all season. He has won back the second most balls for Dallas in the first 3 games. You have Hara when he plays, he drops deep into the mid third to pressure to pair with Acosta, O'Brien. If you start Tespin, you have another good player off the ball. So, I mean, if I'm Houston, I avoid that completely, right? You probably play through the wings with your, I would say, two strongest assets, which would be
Hmm.
Pika Old and Pasher. You make Rodriguez push up. Corona maybe not as much, but you still have him as an outlet up there. How does Dallas respond to that if that happens? If they just completely, I would say, ignore their strong suit in the middle and either try to play like long balls down the wing or just try to dribble it out there.
I think that will cause Dallas some issues because I feel like they have struggled out wide the most. Um, I think if Houston attack the flanks, I wouldn't be surprised if we see a more maybe defensive Dallas. I wouldn't be surprised if they do drop their wingers a little deeper. Like you have noticed that, or like you've mentioned, O'Brien is like one of the better recovering players for Dallas. But I'm not sure. That's a great question. I honestly don't have anything right now off the top of my head on how Dallas could counteract that. Maybe somehow like providing a supporting defensive option with Tessman and Acosta playing kind of those DM roles. Uh, but yeah, I mean, I guess the only thing they can do defensively is just to force those wingers not to be able to maybe cut inside and out wide because at times we have seen Houston not be as productive with their crossing as they could be. So maybe that could be an option for Dallas defensively. But honestly, I don't think I could give you uh I don't know, like a convincing or concrete answer right now on that. I guess we just have to see how the game develops and yeah, and just kind of see what happens there.
Definitely. I mean, you mentioned it. Efficiency for Houston is terrible.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, all of their goals have been inside the box.
Mm-hmm.
You know, all of the goals have been relatively like one on one. Like not necessarily, but there
Yeah.
was like Pasher had like a tap in. Oruti's goal, he had one center back and the goalkeeper in front of him. Memo was one on one against the goalkeeper. 3 goals of the year, right? I don't see why we waste so much possession with shooting outside the box.
Yeah.
Like it hasn't happened this year. We might get a goal, but like is that goal worth it versus going with what works for us? You know what I mean?
Hmm.
If we're gonna do crosses, we talked about it last podcast. Ground,
Yep.
keep it on the ground. Like,
Yep.
you know what I mean?
Yep.
It's, I don't think any team is. I can only think of one goal, which if I'm remembering correctly, two goals that have been from headers from games I've watched across the MLS, and it's just not productive to be
Yeah.
playing like that. But at the same time, does Todd Ramos like? I wouldn't. I'm sure he knows, but does he prefer to keep playing this way just because of the makeup of the team? Maybe. I just don't think it's going to get him very far against a team like Dallas.
Yeah. Uh, it, I think it is. I think it's important to note. I think last game Dallas were pretty impressive like in aerial duels defensively. I think they really didn't give uh many of them up. I know Martinez was specifically good at clearing a lot of those crosses going into the box. So I don't think that's to Houston's benefit. And it's not really setting them up for success against, like you said, a team like Dallas. I think they are way better off trying to find ways to isolate their rapid wingers against the Dallas fullbacks. I think that's where Dynamo win the game by setting those two players, those wingers up in one-on-one situations to show their quality.
All I'm saying is forever orange. We better win. Um,
No, it's definitely shaping up to be a spicy game. I'm telling you, like I'm seeing the animosity. I think one of the Dallas players just straight up said like I just don't like the city or something like that on Twitter. There's like a quote. So like it's definitely gonna be I wouldn't be surprised if it becomes like a super physical match.
I'm ready for like a brawl at the
I
45th minute.
honestly
And
Um,
wouldn't be surprised. Yeah, what's up, Javi?
there's always been that like animosity between the cities, like
Yeah.
of Texas, like whether it be in baseball or football, or just in general. Like even if you're not into the sport, you just don't like. For some reason, you just don't like. If you're from Houston, you just don't like Dallas, and if you're from Dallas, you just think Houston's just trash, and
Absolutely.
notice
it's
how
gonna be good.
notice how Javi said, he doesn't like Dallas. That
Well,
Austin's
I'm
coming
sorry.
at.
What?
You said when you said
What was
Houston,
that?
Oh,
You have to
Houston.
speak
you
a
know
little louder.
what? Now I'm looking forward to the Houston Dynamo versus Austin FC for the pod content.
Easy win, no
Oh,
problem.
okay. Hey, hey! You
That's
hear
gonna
that?
be a real
Everyone,
good
clip
one.
that. Clip what he just said. Easy one, yo. I'll see you
You
about that.
know,
Oh, I
have you beat Austin? Just make him cross all day. That's it.
I
Easy
can't
win.
wait to make that like a soundbite and like every time something goes against Houston, just play it with that. That'd be amazing. But
Remember, he said easy win. Hey, I'll
Easy
put
win.
$10 on it right now.
I don't know about that. I gotta retire, man.
Okay.
oh, all right.
That's like
Well,
20 minutes. That's like 20 minutes of work.
all right,
That's a
boys.
lot.
Boys, before we move on to Austin FC, I'm gonna ask y'all, what are y'all's scoreline predictions for the Texas Derby on Saturday?
I'll let Javi go first since he's a trader.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'll go first.
All right, go ahead, Javi.
My my predictions. I think it's gonna be. I'm thinking FC Dallas is gonna win, take the win, and I think it's gonna be. I think it's gonna be a 3-1 win.
surprise
3-1.
Pikachu face. Surprise
3-1
Pikachu
win.
face.
Yeah.
3-1 from
3-1 win. I'm
Dallas.
sorry.
All right,
I'm
Oscar.
sorry.
Do you want my like hopeful answer or my realistic answer?
I want to
No, your
mix
real answer. No,
mix them together. Just what's on your chest. Just get it off your chest.
I think they tie 1-1.
1-1.
Let me tell you why.
Conservative.
Houston's gonna score a goal. My boy Moneyball Pasher.
Uh-huh.
You know, he's gonna score a goal. And then someone's going like fall asleep. I don't know who. Someone will. And then Dallas is gonna tie it right back. And then we're just gonna have Tal Ramos do his little magic. We're gonna close down. We're gonna look for the point again. We're gonna be the draw team this year. That's what I'm saying.
I looking at these two teams played so far in the season, I think stylistically it benefits Houston a little bit, and I think Houston take this home 2-1. That's my sincere
Oh,
that's my sincere prediction
This is coming
interesting.
from the
of
FC
this game.
Dallas.
Okay, I'm not an FC Dallas fan. I just watch a lot of
This
FC
is coming
Dallas.
from.
But yes, I've watched them play, and I think, and there's also kind of a interesting dynamic here because you know how it's not always okay. So Houston play the Timbers, right? Houston loses to the
Yes, sir.
Timbers. Dallas play
Yes, sir.
Timbers. They beat Timbers. So, following that trend or pattern, Dallas should beat Houston. But and this has no like statistics or any like anything behind it, but it's never like that. You know, it's always like it seems to be always like paper scissors rock when it comes to soccer and teams just because of the stylistic matchups that you have. So technically you would say, okay, Houston lost to the Timbers, Dallas beat the Timbers, so Dallas should beat Houston, but it's not like that. And I really do think that Fafa slash, aka Fafino and Moneyball Pasher are really gonna put a lot of stress on those Dallas fullbacks that sometimes just I think aren't sound defensively. Um, maybe the 4-2-3-1 shape because most of what we've watched of Dallas has been in that 3-4-3, but even in that 4-2-3-1 shape, I don't know, but I can just see those Houston wingers having a field day. I could be wrong, but that's just
I agree.
that's just kind of my prediction. Kind of taking what they've done so far in the season up to this point and watching both of the teams play against other opponents that kind of do resemble parts of what or how these teams play, if that makes sense.
I mean, Pastor on his best day, he's like the MLS Messi. So I completely agree. No buts for me there.
Yeah.
But you forgot the most important thing, Silvio. I'm a little
Uh-huh.
pointing it in you.
Uh,
Who's gonna have the most drip?
of course.
Lucci or Top Ramos?
I think Lucci,
Come on.
dude. Lucci. I mean, look, I love Top Ramos. I think he's a great manager. But he just has that car salesman like drip to him, and that's just not
Call
it,
him a
Chief.
dad. Call him a
Yeah,
dad.
like he's got
Call
the
him.
dad drip. Like, all right, I get it. Your flares, your little orange suit or your orange tie, that's cool, but like that's just not drippy enough, I think Lucci outdrips Todd this
I think he's gonna
weekend.
prove you wrong. I think he's gonna prove you wrong.
Honestly, I wouldn't be
He-
surprised if both of them just go with tracksuits at this point. Lucci trying to keep, like the superstition. I got my first one with the tracksuit on or the training sweats on, and I think Todd has used his like training sweats or training suit for most of the season so far. So wouldn't be surprised if they go with that.
Whoever has the tightest pants wins. Moving on, Austin.
That's on the Oscar scale. Tightest pants wins. All right. But just a quick note. I know we keep saying that before we move on to Dallas or to Austin, but they have 41 all-time MLS meetings. There's been 14 Dallas wins, 13 Houston wins, and 14 draws. So I don't know. The paper
We're gonna
scissors.
make a 14.
Hey,
14.
I don't know.
14.
All I'm saying is the paper scissors rock theory might kind of have something behind it. I don't know. But anyways, that's definitely going to be a
We have Brian Ching. Easy clap.
but no, it's definitely gonna. I think this is the game that I'm most excited for so far this season. I can't wait to watch this game. It's gonna be so good because it's always fun watching derbies, but after you follow teams so closely and then have them match up, I think it's always fun. For sure.
Isn't this right? Isn't this right after the the Barcelona game? Yes, it
Uh,
is. So,
yes, it is
uh,
Barcelona Atletico.
so
It's gonna be a
I'll be
soccer
high
filled.
stressed tomorrow.
Oh,
I'll be high
yeah,
stressed tomorrow.
100%. All right, let's move on to Sporting KC versus Austin FC. Austin FC is going into week 4 of the MLS in 4th place of the Western Conference, which of course has fans buzzing. But they are going up against a Sporting KC team that is looking to bounce back from their 3-1 loss to Salt Lake last weekend. Javi, question: can Los Verdes extend their win streak on Sunday?
They can. They can. It's just depending on whether they can fix their mistakes. Some of the constant mistakes that I keep seeing in the past couple games. It just depends. I think I think what's gonna be a big test for them in this game is how well they can hold their defensive shape, and when they lose the ball, and how well they can stick to what they do. Because I think one of the big things I saw last game um, was when they went up and Minnesota in the second half had come out and they had put numbers up on they had moved up their higher line of engagement on the defense and the midfield and attack. Their defenders were sitting almost at the half line, so they almost had all their players on the Austin's half, um, giving Austin, the space in behind, letting
Mhm.
them letting them run behind them. But it just seemed like Austin was just so eager to use that space, which caused them to move away from the way they play. So I think this will be a tough game because af- after looking at Sporting Casey's results, yeah, the results are on decline right now. Um, they've beaten New York Red Bulls, a New York Red Bulls that sits, I think, fourth right now,
Mhm.
or uh, they sit mid-table
Yeah.
in the East Conference. They've beaten them. They tied against Orlando right now, who sits third in the East, and it is lost to Real Salt Lake team that's undefeated right now. Technically, they one of their wins was against Sporting KC, but they haven't lost yet, and they're near the top of the table in the West. So I mean, these are good opponents that they're playing, um, and I think Sporting KC has the ability to exploit a lot of the space that will be behind Austin when Austin, have that high line of engagement. Um, so it's gonna be tough. I hope what I hope I don't see, and what I hope I see is I hope I see Austin make a lot less of the mistakes that are, simple mistakes, as you were saying in your preview. I see a lot of simple mistakes that Austin makes, whether it be just trying to force the ball too much, forcing the ball behind, trying to play the over the top ball win. You don't have to do that. Just keep be patient. Let them chase. Let them come after you. Let them follow the ball. You know, there will be a miscommunication on their part, on Sporting KC's part,
Mhm.
on the defense's part. Just wait for that moment to happen. Just keep moving the ball around. There's no need to try to force anything. I
Absolutely.
want to see less of that. I want to see less of trying to force the ball, because I think there's too many times where they do that and then they give the ball up too easily, and
Ab
then
Mhm.
whether it can result in a counter, or if they're down like they were last week, it results on the opponent getting the possession and holding the ball. So main thing is I want to see a better performance this week. I think last week's performance, it was a grind. It was a hard fought win, but it could have easily been a tie, or they could have easily lost. There are many chances that Minnesota had that Austin could have been down, but yeah, I want to see a more convincing performance this week against a good Sporting Kansas City side.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. I agree that last weekend, I would argue, is one of their worst performances so far this season. I don't know if you agree with that, Javi.
Yeah, yeah, it was, and it was mostly because, as like I said, because they had it seemed like in the second half, and especially when they had taken out um Cecilio Dominguez and
Hmm.
Fagundes, it seemed and they might not have even mean to have done it intentionally, but it just seemed like the decision making was just, let's play it forward, let's play it forward. We gotta play it quick. We gotta
Yeah.
play. We know there's that space there. Let's try to exploit that. And granted, there were opportunities where they did play the ball behind, behind that line, and Gallagher had chances one on one, or Hosen had chances one on one. Um, it went right, and it just went right to the goalkeeper or went wide.
Uh,
But more often than not, it just seemed like they overshot the ball. It got way overplayed, or it got intercepted, and then Kansas City got the ball back, and they're able to hold this. I hope they don't do that. I need We know that they play well when they play, you know, possession, when they just keep moving the ball around. There's no you will tire your opponent in doing so by just having them chase the ball. Um but yeah, it was not a good performance last week. It was very nerve-wracking, and I didn't like watching it because I know they could play better. And
yeah.
when you know your team can play better, and they're not playing the way they can play, it's it's not a good feeling. But I'm saying it was a hard-fought win. It was a good test of their defense, to see, could they hold on to everything that Minnesota was giving them, because even though, Minnesota hasn't put up a lot of shots on target, d- they they still create the chances. They create a lot of the chances, and there's no reason to try to, you know, how you say, like, keep pushing that, like, try to keep letting them take the shots. Just hold the ball. If you hold the ball, you decrease the number of shots that they have.
Yeah,
But
absolutely. I agree with that. And quickly before kind of talking about their specific matchup with Sporting KC, I do want to add to that point where sure you were giving space in behind, and obviously we can't fault the team too much for trying to exploit the space given to them, but obviously it wasn't working. Number one, right? It wasn't working. You were giving Minnesota the ball back to create more scoring opportunities. And that's happening because just it's not as simple. And I feel like people make it out to be just throw bodies in front of the ball, like two lines of five and just defend. It's not that simple. And maybe people see it as, you know, killing football. And even though I am kind of a possession football fan and I like to see with teams in possession, there's a lot of work that goes into a system of defending behind the ball. And some teams just aren't cut out for it. Number one, they don't practice it systematically during training. So they don't know how to shift depending on where the ball is relative to to players on the pitch. That's number one. And two, if you're not used to training that way, players just don't well first when it comes to fitness they just get tired getting behind a ball, and Austin doesn't, and obviously Austin does not practice that. Austin has been, gassed, like we've noticed, 65 minutes into games, and I think you're just kind of accelerating that process, just having them chase a ball sitting 10 men behind the
yeah,
ball. And two, they just don't have the players that are they don't have the defensive profiles to be able to concentrate that long behind the ball out of possession. Like Los
mm,
Verdes, they continue to be their best with the ball at their feet. Like we look at Wolves side and they're near the top of the league in terms of possession. And it's so obvious that when you watch them play, they're comfortable controlling the game through their precise passing. And now, kind of going into Sporting KC here, really quick, Javi. On the other hand, Sporting KC's possession is like near the bottom of the league, and they are more organized when playing out of possession. So there's kind of a play, like a clash of play styles here. And honestly, I think this sets up on Austin for success uh, to hold the ball, because if they don't, number one, I don't think that they have the players to be able to number one counter and number two hold off a clean sheet the whole game out of possession. And and even in possession, I get specifically for this game, Kansas City is going to be a tricky team to break down.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, so you go ahead. I have.
I was just gonna say I agreed there. I think this is gonna be a pretty, I don't want to say easy win, but of the three matchups, this is definitely the best one for Austin, and that's because of the way Sport and Kansas, I guess, handles themselves defensively. They press significantly less than LAFC. They press significantly less than Colorado and Minnesota. They also, like you mentioned on the ball, low possession, right? And when they do have the ball, they tend to go wide with their attacks, kind of exploiting the wings. But it usually doesn't lead to much. They have a pretty bad XG, one per game for three games. Their passing tends to be pretty. I wouldn't say progressive. They recycle the ball a lot. I think it all comes down to Austin utilizing Ring a little bit differently. Last game they had him back, right? They had him drop between the center backs. I don't think against this team it's, I would say, in their best interest. I think it would definitely, I would say, pretty much secure a win for Austin, excluding any mental lapse. But if they're able to use Ring more offensively, hopefully Gallagher, if he starts, I do think Austin's going to have at least significantly more chances and a more comfortable game than they did against Minnesota. But I did have a question for you, Javi.
Yes.
I don't know if you saw, but Wolf basically praised Hosen midweek. He likes how he plays. We talked about it last week. He likes how he drops deep, how he's like the target man that I wouldn't say Gallagher can't do. He could obviously, I think Silvio said it pretty well. It's easier to learn how to do that than to be like, I guess, very creative and dynamic in the final third. But who do you think he starts, given what he said?
Oh well, that's easy. Now, if he said that, then he's probably more than likely gonna start with Hosen. But and I wouldn't fault him for it. Maybe he's just more. Maybe he's comfortable and he suits the kind of style that Wolf wants in the player like that. Because like you said, like you pointed out last episode, that he does drop a lot, so he offers that extra option for passing to the players, so the midfielders or for the wingers. So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if he gets to start. But going back to the Alex Ring thing and kind of talking about playing him a little differently than they did last game, I do think that because of the probably the possibility that Austin will be having the ball a lot, they won't be pressed as much, which will let it be more easier for them to come up the field with the ball in possession. And I think in doing so, um, they're gonna be holding that higher line of engagement, kind of like how we saw with what Minnesota did with Austin last week. It's gonna be I feel like it's gonna be that high where the two center backs will be kind of near the halfway line, and then Ring will kind of be in front of them, and he'll just be moving like side to side, being that guy, the guy that if they need an outlet, he'll be there in the back to so they can distribute to him, and then he'll find the next pass. He'll look up and he'll see, okay, where I can switch the field, or I can try to play it over the top on where the side I am. But I think he will be a bigger factor in the offense just because of how much possession it seems that they're going to have this game. But and this will bring up another test for them. Another thing that I think that is something that I haven't feel like I've seen from Austin this season, and it's their what can they do when they get the ball in the final third. We see them pass the ball, move
Mhm.
around, and they cross it, but can they? I feel like they haven't been as clinical in the chances that they had. I certainly didn't seem like it last week when they had their chances. They didn't make the best of them.
Right.
So I'm hoping to see. We know. I'm hoping that they can put those problems to the side this game, and hopefully they can do something a little better. That's why I was kind of hoping that they weren't going to play Hosen and kind of play Gallagher,
Exactly.
but I know that Hosen's the kind of striker that will come down, uh, will come to this kind of center of the field, ask for the ball, be that extra option, not play so on the 18-yard box and just wait for the ball to get there. Um, but yeah, I think this will be a test and see how they move the ball in that final third. Can they not be predictable? Can they switch up how they're making their runs? Can they switch up, you know, how their attack's going to be? And they need to not force it. That just because I'm saying that you need to be more creative doesn't mean you have to force balls. It can just be the runs being made and 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 something simple like that. It doesn't have to be going for the Hail Mary or going for the over the top ball, and with the overlapping wingback, because that's probably what it'll be. What we'll be seeing is the wingbacks or the fullbacks will be pushing up high. So then your last line of engagement will probably be Ring, who I trust, to be that first,
Hmm.
to be that guy right there, to be, to be
Mhm.
spotting out, okay, who is the opponent, who are they looking to pass, and I'm gonna get there before the ball even gets to that point. And then behind him will be the two center backs. But I just think, yeah, I'm I'm always I always am interested to see how the attack gets how a team that's so possession heavy, how they can move when they get to that final third, because it's hard, because you put a lot of players into almost like a fourth of the field,
Yeah.
almost a third, but really the more important part is that last part, the fourth part, where it goes from the 18-yard box and you're going sideline to sideline. How can they move? How are they going to be creating space for each other?
I
So
think
it
that's
it
something like all three teams have struggled with, like extensively. But question for you, since you mentioned it, I mean, if they have the ball, right, they're all going to
yeah.
be pushed up, like you mentioned. Do you push up the wingbacks and overextend again, which didn't prove to be that fruitful? Um, I would say maybe not. But even let's say they do, and they kind of revert back to that crossing game they were doing. I would hope a lot more comes through Fagundes, who's I would say a little bit more composed and I would say efficient. But what role do you see Hosen having when they're like in that final third? I mean, if he's not a target man, he's up there. Whenever
Y-
he's been up there, he's really been a target man, like more for like a header cross. He's not. I wouldn't say he's gifted in terms of height or like just like attacking threat and aerially. What would you prefer he do to, I guess, help the team if that's the case, if they're really all like compressed up front?
yeah, so I think one of the and to answer your first question is whether I think the fullbacks should push, or here I'll answer it by kind of explaining how Dominguez likes to play, which is he likes to kind of go center, like move more to the inside.
Mhm.
Kind of, he doesn't like being with his back to the sideline. So there will be that space to exploit. So I do think the at least the left one will push up much farther than Lima does, even though Lima does push up a lot, and he actually does, I think, pretty well when he does push up. But I think what they need to change when the fullback does push up and does get the ball is, and it's, I guess, I don't know if it might be a long shot to guess at, to hope that they do this, but not always go for the cross. Why why is it that, and it seems like I see it a lot in this league, is it's like they put a high number of crosses and they hope, oh, let's hope that a ball just falls, a deflection will fall onto the feet of one of our guys and it'll take an awkward hit, and then we can take a shot and it'll go into the goal. And I guess they're hoping that happens with the number of volume that the crosses that they put in. But what I hope Austin does is when the fullbacks get the ball, and they're going to get it when either from Dominguez or they're going to be getting it from the midfield because Dominguez will be pulling that defender up when he comes inside and comes short. And the fullback will kind of exploit that space. When they do get it, don't always think, oh, let me cross it in. Let me stop the ball, stop the dribble, whether it be at the end of the field, at kind of the touch line, or pull it back and come or and pass it back. And then try to make it find its way to the middle without having to cross. Because you're gonna pull the extra guy, the the fullback will pull the extra player from the midfield, someone who's tracking him. He's going to pull him with him when he makes the run. If it's not the attacker that he's bringing that he's going to be matched up against, it's going to be a center back if he's that quick. And then once you pull the center back, now you have a man advantage in the box. But it doesn't mean you have to cross it. You can always short pass it and then make it and just have that ball slowly work its way across the box until it reaches the other side where either the other fullback will be or the forward will be. And then I think at that point, I think that's where Hosen role is. He's gonna have to figure out. He's gonna have to have that instinct. Okay, where where is the space that where is the space that will be created when the fullbacks run towards the goal, rather than just getting to the end of the field and crossing it. Run inwards. Once you get to that point, run in. And then once you draw someone, pass it. Whether it's Dominguez, and then Dominguez will draw someone, then pass it again. You kind of see what I'm saying? Like it doesn't always have to like cross it and then give up possession, and then they get it back, and then where they clear, and then you just start from square one. Try
Definitely.
to try to work the ball into the middle with short passes. It doesn't always have to be a long cross, and what I think Hosen could do is Hosen needs to. This is where Hosen's going to be able is going to be tested to where does he have that IQ, that soccer IQ to figure out okay where do I need to be next? Where do I think the ball's going to be next when it's being passed across inside the box? If the fullback comes in and he draws someone. Dominguez gets open. Okay, but now Dominguez is covered and he's going to draw someone. Where do I need to be next? Do I need to be at the top of the box? Do I need to be making a run towards a goal, or should I stay back and stay at top of the box where it probably will be open because everyone's going to be running towards the goal to try to block, shield, or something like that. Always look. Oh, don't. They need to not be so. Always think. Is there an extra guy there? And I think that's where Hosen's role is going to be key. Is he needs to have that instinct of where the next space is going to be created for him to exploit. So yes, and I think he can do that while also being able to drop in when the play gets stagnant. Being able to draw defenders, being able to pull them up with him. But I think it's something that him and Dominguez both do. They both like coming short, when the play gets kind of stagnant, and they'll draw defenders and they'll pull them up with them. And at that point, there's going to be the runs being made by either the fullbacks, or if Hosen comes short, it'll be Dominguez making the run behind them. But then when those passes are created, when they're being distributed over the top, they need to be more accurate. I feel like I've seen too many times where they try to give those balls and they're just way off. Whether it's from Ring or from Fagundes, it just seems like they're not accurate. So yeah, I'm sorry. I just wanted a huge spiel right there. That's really how
No,
long
you're
I
good.
talk.
No, you're good.
Javi is against the cross. I fully endorse. Thank you.
And I kind of want to bring up kind of, I guess, the last point here before we start winding or start, ending the pod here. Um, Going back to Kansas City pressing, it looks statistically to me, I guess, it looks like they have maybe one of the more efficient pressing systems, but just in one area of the pitch because they do regain possession through their press about 32% of the time. But interestingly, their press is kind of focused on winning the ball back in the middle third of the pitch. I think they've pressed that area 217 times compared to 140 and 125 in their defensive and opponent's third, respectively. So I kind of want to ask that question, Javi. Do you think, or I guess to Oscar as well, do you think that the key to Austin here is to get through that pressing line in the middle of the pitch in that middle third through precise passing, or yeah, to kind of bypass that disruptive press that they have, or do you think that they start playing a little, like Oscar pointed out, um kind of pushing with their wingbacks a little bit to not have to deal with that?
I think they do. You see, and this is, I think they do play with the wingbacks, and one of the reasons why is because the formation they like playing. They're gonna match Austin in the 4-3-3 as well. It won't be a 4-4-2. It won't be a 4-2-3. It's gonna be a 4-3-3. And what we saw last game and against Minnesota when Austin played Minnesota, I feel like Minnesota made it uh like a goal to take away the middle of the field for them, um, and forcing them out wide. But even then, Austin likes pushing. I feel like from the wings. I've pointed out in the last episode. I feel like a lot of their attack is on the left side with Dominguez. So it's gonna it's it's gonna be a combination of they'll try to play to the middle. They'll take the with Sporting will, if they do take it away, if they do achieve to take it away, they'll take it away and then they'll force it, back to the center back, and the fullback will come down almost even with the fullback with the center back, get the pass there. Dominguez will then come short because his kind of instinct or his way of playing is he'll come short, receive the ball, then from that point he'll like to play to the midfielder who's right there waiting for the ball, and then there'll be that space created when Cecilio comes down to retrieve the ball that the fullback can exploit. But I think um, it's it's it it's gonna be in Austin's favor if Sporting tries to take the middle of the field away um, from Austin. I think, to be honest, to kind of take if you want to kind of limit Austin's attack and kind of force him to do something different than what they like to do, is you try to make them play into the middle. To be honest, try to force them to play through their midfielders. Try to force them to make combinations from the center mids to the strikers. Don't let them, you know, use their fullbacks. Don't let them get to their fullbacks. Always take the sideline away. Force them in the middle, um, because I think where we see a lot less of like connecting passes or uh distributions in their possession is from the center mids to like their strikers in the mid. So it's always a lot of their um like passes and where the plays are being made are from the wings because it's how they like playing. They like playing with their fullbacks going up. So a lot of their play will be outnumbering the sidelines from where the fullback or the winger and the fullback will both exploit that space and exploit that space.
Hmm.
And the winger will probably just tuck in it a little more than the fullbacks will, and the fullbacks will overlap them. Um, so yeah, I think yeah, I just think it'll play into Austin's favor if Sporting Kansas tries to do that. But I don't know, maybe they see that, and maybe they see that Alex Ring is just too much of a, or that Pochettino or one of those midfielders, or maybe they see that Dominguez likes coming short, and they don't want that connection. They don't want the pass, the distribution to be from to Dominguez from the midfield because they're afraid of Dominguez's potential and his skill from if it's played. If they split the defenders right there, and then play that ball between the line. So yeah, but I mean, I just I guess they're thinking that Austin will just cross it, and
Mhm.
seeing Austin's success rate with crossing, how if any goals have come from it, um, and how the volume they put up. I just think that that's what they're betting on, that they won't be able to make much from it.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, I think it's I think this is gonna be a tough match for Austin. I just think because the matches they've played and the mistakes I've seen from them, just giving the ball back easily. And even if they win it back and they start, they start with possession again at the midfield. Um, it's just I feel like they just haven't been clinical with this some of the shots and opportunities they've been given. Um, and then they also I feel like they've just had trouble being creative in that final third,
Yeah.
making the runs and trying to creating space for each other. I feel like they're not. I feel like the only time I see space being created is on that left side with Dominguez and Komanec now. But I think that's just because of Dominguez's tendency to come more inside and like to get the ball on the inside. On the other side, you don't see Stroud, making that kind of pushing more to the inside. You see him kind of staying on the wing. And I think that's why you kind of see you don't see play go down the right side as much as you do on the left side. You'll
Mhm.
see it go down the right side after it being so much on the left side, and you'll kind of switch it and move it to the right, but most of it will come from the left side because of just how much space there is and how much the two players, the fullback and Dominguez, complement each other. I don't
Yeah.
think they mean to do it intentionally, but that's just how it's been.
Yeah, you're just kind of given, with Dominguez's inclination to tuck in a little more inside to try to attack those half spaces, you leave that space for an overlapping Colmanek to, take advantage of that space left open. I absolutely agree with that. Oscar, quickly here, anything to add on Kansas City press and maybe um, how it can affect Austin's buildup in the middle of the pitch?
Gonna see the same thing we saw against LAFC. Ring
Mm-hmm.
don't care. Easy money. Easy. Try impress him. I
Wait,
dare
what?
you. Ring is gonna like run circles press, no problem.
Yeah, that's
Um,
that's that's definitely a good point to make. Like Javi was saying, maybe they don't do that, or Javi was saying they do press to the middle, but even there is a point to be said that even if Ring can bypass that press, that there is this kind of lack of I'd say connection between the midfield and the strikers directly. It doesn't seem like there's a lot of goals that start out from the middle of the pitch. But no, I agree. Alex Ring is a midfield maestro relative to other players in the MLS. So
it
it would
reminds me
be.
of
Mhm.
me in high school.
Okay, dude.
So
All
yeah,
right, dude.
definitely pressing Ring in the middle doesn't seem like the best idea. Um, but yeah, I think that's probably going to be the most interesting thing for me that game is to see how Kansas City change it up, and if they don't, how Austin reacts to that, and if they can go ahead and take advantage of how good they are with their passing and how many chances they're able to create after bypassing that Kansas press.
Yeah, it's it's gonna be it's gonna be a good game to watch. We're gonna
Yeah,
learn a lot about
ab-
how Austin,
absolutely.
how far Austin has come from their first game, even though it's only their fourth game. But we're gonna see if they've learned um anything on how they can create space for each other, and learned if they can be more disciplined and more composed. When it comes to playing that possession style of football. Just be I hope to see a little more patience from from them from when they're playing. When they're playing when they'll be working the ball around on the opponent's side. I don't want to see so much forcing over the top. I get you want to do it sometimes to keep the defense on their toes, make them know that we can we're watching your defense, and we saw that you made that mistake to not track our run, but we that there there doesn't need they don't need to be playing, try to play that hero ball all the time. Just play the simple pass.
It's kind of funny you mentioned that because I like those last like 30 minutes against Minnesota, I think were the most like relatable to what you're trying to say. And it's not really their starting lineup. So
Yeah, and it was tough to watch that because and and I don't know who if it was the coach telling them to exploit, or whether it was just they saw the space, and like I said, they created like a couple one-on-one chances with the goalkeeper, but most of the time they were just giving the ball back to Minnesota, and it's like, like we can't be you can't be doing that to yourselves. Like, you gotta, slow the pace down, shift the momentum. It just seemed for like almost 35 minutes Minnesota had the momentum, and there was no need for that. Like, you're giving them the confidence to make them think that, that they're in this game, and try do what you can do what you do, which is play the possession ball, pass it around. There's no need to, you know, force it so many times behind the defense, and you're just giving the ball back so easily. Yeah, it was just, and then watching, and they came away with the win, but watching the amount of crosses that were just going in, and I was just like, gosh, one of these is gonna hit the back of the net, and then it's really gonna shift the momentum, and then it's probably gonna give them the confidence to even attack more or press more. I don't know, but yeah, it was not a pretty last 30 minutes, and I just hope they don't play like that or think that they need to play like that again, or they can play like that, because it wasn't comfortable. It wasn't a comfortable win,
Yeah.
comfortable game.
Yeah.
last question for
Mhm.
oh sorry.
No, no,
I
go
was
ahead.
gonna
Go
say
ahead.
last question for y'all. When do they rest Ring? Going at the game 4. It looks like he's playing every single minute possible. But do you get worried at some point that they need to rest him? Even I mean, Austin doesn't necessarily have like a packed schedule because they're not in the CONCACAF Champions League and stuff like that. But still, you don't want him getting injured midway.
I think there's games where maybe you don't have to. You can let's put it like this. You can pick and choose the time. Like if you're up a couple goals against a team, you can definitely take him out and rest him for like 30 minutes here, 20 minutes here. But also, I'd argue that kind of his role at times isn't as maybe intense as other players, if that makes sense. Maybe I'm off on this, but I think of combined with what they're asking of him to do, and that at times you could easily take him out of a game where you do have an advantage, on top of what you pointed out that they don't have a compact or yeah, like a compact schedule where they're playing in midweek games. I think you can manage it, pretty simple with Ring.
Yeah, I don't. It's tough for me to say because I don't know how the player fatigue kind of is in this, with a team that doesn't have Champions League. Um, and they're just kind of playing the one game every weekend and stuff. So I don't know if it does, if it builds on him and he needs to rest. Listen to him. I mean, I feel like he's the kind of person that um he will let you know if he needs to rest, but then again, I mean, he's a warrior in the midfield, and he's not gonna wanna
I
rest.
say he rests against Houston. We call it a day. Thank you.
Oh no. No, no, no. For that game, he does not rest. For that game, he comes ready for war.
You gotta give him a breather.
No,
Come
no, no,
on,
no. For that game, he's giving the instruction to man mark Memo the whole game
Memo.
and to take him out of the game.
How
That's
you gonna view him?
I've
Hey,
made sure he circled that game on the calendar.
he can mark memo, but hey, you forgot about Moneyball, Passer, and Fafinha. So good luck.
Okay, dude.
I love it. I love it. All right, guys. Quickly before we end the pod here, what is your scoreline predictions for the game? Let's start with you, Javi.
I'm gonna guess 2-1 Austin.
Okay, 2-1 Austin. Oscar.
The Rio Austin.
The Rio Austin. I am gonna go ahead and say that Austin defeat Sporting KC 3-1. I have to agree. I think they go 3-1. Like I said, I think for me, the most interesting thing is the battle in the midfield, and how Kansas deals with that press. But like you said, Ring is a midfield maestro, and that might not be a tall task for him at all. But we're going to go ahead and end the podcast there. For the listeners, if you have listened up to this point, thank you so much for listening to the podcast. We have a crazy amount of games coming this weekend, and we can't wait to get y'all that content. I think there's a few previews going up tomorrow. We're going to have a Texas Derby one and also an Austin FC one. So be on the lookout for that. Yeah, guys, where can everyone find you on social media?
OJ Aguilar 16.
Okay, Javi.
On Twitter, Adame_Hav.
Yep, on Twitter as well, S Prieto JR. Make sure to also follow at the Final Third Pod on Twitter and check out our website, Final Third Pod. Make sure to leave a rating and a review of our podcast. On all the platforms that you're able to. Really helps the podcast grow. All right, guys. Thank you so much for listening, and we will be back on hopefully Monday or Tuesday with a recap of week 4. See y'all then.